Hello, this is Todd Siegel, Psychic Detective, and you are listening to The Psychic Zone. Anyway, happy post Thanksgiving. I hope you all had a good Thanksgiving weekend. And I'm just being plagued by all these Black Friday sales. And now we have Cyber Monday. Oh my God. So I just turned off my email. Oh, it's crazy. It's also a full moon, too, on this Monday after Thanksgiving. And that's kind of crazy. The energy is crazy. People are going crazy. I didn't do readings this weekend, but I had to work on some missing pet cases that came into me. It's it's a 24-hour job. It really is. Anyway, last time I was reading some passages from my new book that I'm writing, and I am going to be reading some more. I get to the book usually sometimes when I can't sleep or late at night. I will often write more in my book, sometimes early in the morning, and it's overwhelming. I mean, so much information, so many cases I've worked on. It's incredible when I think back on it. I could keep writing this for a couple of years. That is how much information I have. Thinking of information, I thought I'd touch on 2024 just a little bit. I created a post on my Facebook page last night, on my business page, that created some controversy. You know, the brainwashing is still going on in our society. And when I tell people my experiences of people and people that I talk to, and personal experiences, I don't like to be called a conspiracy theorist because I do know what's going on, and many, many of you know what's going on in our society. Right now, there's a good potential for another illness coming our way. I feel that this could happen. And rather than go into all my so-called conspiracy talk, there are those of you that are aware of what's going on. And I'll just leave it at that. You know, it's the problem. I'll get people that come to me for advice, and they take it very seriously. But if we bring up politics or the world scene, they're like, oh, no, you are wrong about that, Todd. It's pretty funny. It's pretty funny. And they have to categorize you and say that you listen to right-wing radio or that you watch Fox News or something like that. And nothing could be further from the truth for me. But we're still in this dangerous mindset, which has me very concerned. And it's not going to go well for people, especially the ones that live in the bubble. So I am very, very concerned about that. And let's just hope things kind of work out next year for our society. But I feel in every different sector a lot of tension, especially financially. I mean, I don't make a lot of money. I just barely get by. And I can tell you I'm being taxed to death for what little I make. And if you have a lot of money and you're wondering where to invest it, I would get some gold and silver, honestly. I would get anything that has physical value that is not highly taxed. And that's what I'd invest in. If your profession is finances and that's what you do every day, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, you must know. Taxation just doesn't, it isn't what you get at the end of the year from the IRS. It's what you, every part of your life is being taxed right now, and it's very bad. It keeps spiking up the prices everywhere. It brings more dishonesty to the table. So people are aware of this and they're cutting back. I understand, but it's coming from one source, and it's the higher ups. So in 2024, I predict that this is going to get even more vicious. I also get a lot of lying next year. I get a lot of lying from the higher ups. And I'm talking about the government. Promises made, promises broken. I get a lot of lying. I don't get a lot on the election yet. I really don't. But I am detecting some very bad people in the running, not to be trusted. So at every end, I feel like next year is just going to be, everything will be escalated. And watch out for another pandemic as well. I kind of feel it's already in the works. I've had reports from clients that they've been sick. And then there's a virus among dogs right now, as somebody told me about. That's awful. They said it's a respiratory illness. One thing I wrote in my page last night was my opinion of it. Well, there's a couple of opinions I have about that. First of all, I know for a fact that animals can catch human viruses. I've witnessed it. I had a farm. I have seen it. Okay? The other fact is I felt some kind of bacteria that was actually caused by food ingested by pets, which caused this bacterium in the lungs, which is kind of an impossible scenario. I guess if you're a vet, you think, well, how could food cause this? Well, there's something that I get from a food source that's affecting the pet's system, which basically materializes into a respiratory illness. So if they want to trace where this has come from, they're going to need to trace some other symptoms, some other factors from other pets and other places. For some reason, I'm getting California. I don't know why. But the western states come to me right now. I don't think it's like kennel cough. I actually think it's quite a serious thing, actually. And it may be resistant to most antibiotics, which is scary. You know, one time I was traveling out of town. This was a long time ago when I had my farm up north, and I caught a terrible, terrible flu virus. Came back home. I went into my sheep barn. I, had a big flock of sheep and was feeding them all. And within a day or so, they all came down with a viral pneumonia. And I really felt something from me transferred to them. It was terrible. I had sheep that died in my arms. I was, with the help of a vet, I was injecting shots into the sheep twice a day, trying to keep them stabilized. I saved most of them, but I lost a few. It was nasty. And I've seen other incidents of this, but I do think us humans can transfer disease to pets. Anyway, I hope this book that I've written inspires people. I hope it's a wealth of knowledge. I don't want it to be just about me, but I wanted to really express what this work is capable of, how it works. Well, I hope I do that. I'll start here. Everything depends on your mindset in this life. If you have survived completely alone and have to fend for yourself, you have a different understanding of life. I spent many years alone. I don't think if I didn't spend all that time alone, I would not have discovered my psychic abilities. I discovered a whole world of spirit life that interacted with me daily. It was something I could not explain to anyone. I remember when I was in my mid-20s, I had this recurring vision of being an old man living alone in the early 1900s. I could see every detail around me of dirt streets and the smell of horse manure and tar. I lived in a small room that looked out on this dusty road. I even remember an old automobile that I owned. Years later, I saw that car at a classic auto show. It was a real Model A Ford from the 1920s. This vision of the old man came to me frequently in my waking hours. I questioned whether that was me in a past life or a spirit that was attracted to me. I never really found the answer, but it left an imprint on me in the way I look at life. We continue to go on in this life and beyond this life. My years alone were very hard. I never felt like I belonged in this time and place. When you raise animals, they don't live long. You develop an understanding of impermanence. I have seen so much death in front of my eyes. We humans try everything we can to secure our lives with money and extending our longevity and health. It's not our choice. Our life can be taken away from us very quickly and for no reason. I see this in my work daily. Be true to your heart is my advice. Your love, whether it be for a person or animal, or a love of objects, is still love. This is what we take with us when we leave this world. There is a support system in the invisible world. It is on your side. I doubted my psychic abilities for a long time. I was my biggest skeptic. I thought maybe it was my imagination running wild. Every time I would predict something correctly, I thought it was a coincidence. After hundreds of coincidences, I finally said to myself, this must be real. I was very nervous about doing this as a profession. I spent many years being a carpenter and farmer during the day and doing readings for people in the evening. I eventually had some cards made and put them in some local stores. I remember how cute the card was. It was a big moment for me. Then I got some calls and did some in-person readings for people locally. I did a reading for myself from a well-known psychic in New Hampshire. She asked me at the end of the reading if I could cover some psychic functions for her in my state. She wasn't able to travel to my state at that time. I said, "Really? You want me to do these readings for you? Are you sure I am good enough?" She replied and said, "You have very high ability, Todd, and I would not have asked you if I didn't think you could help." So one of those functions was a formal party for a local college. It was really busy, and I set up a table in there. I started doing my work, and the response from the students was very reassuring. They were very impressed. I started to gain more confidence at that point. I couldn't believe I could just start talking to people and give them all these true facts about their life. Even to this day, I am amazed at this ability and still wonder how I do it. I never assume anything and never take this ability for granted. I'm very humble about it and remain this way. The changes that have taken place in our society in recent years have affected not only people's consciousness, but my work as a psychic. The spirit world changes as we change. Separating our physical lives and our minds from the spirit world is wrong. We are spirit. And the energy of the invisible world, as I call it. It is not something that only happens to us when we die. Most ancient cultures identified with this in their daily lives. The supernatural and the occult are not subjects for movies, but reality for people like me that are plugged into the psychic world. How we think and how we operate as humans obviously affects the energy of life, and in return affects spirit around us. So I have seen more spirit move on recently. That is why many people feel lost. They have lost their connection to the spirits. We can change this if we start spiritual practices again. These practices must deal with how we think about everything. Your body is symbolic of the spirit world, every single part of it. Why do you have 2 eyes and 5 fingers on each hand? Why do we feel hurt? And why do we get angry? These are very elemental things, but in my mind, they are very important. Male and female are not just biology, but an essential part to understanding the universe and the energy of our souls. In my readings dealing with health, I understand this. The body has a flow of energy, and when there are blockages, that brings disease. Your psychology and emotions also affect this. Very early on, I could read the body. I see colors which represent issues. Red often means inflammation and high blood pressure. Black means dead tissue. Green can mean cancer and fungus in the body. A translucent white often means cancer as well. I can also hear medical terms, and sometimes during the reading I will look them up for a client. I scan the human body in readings, and if I feel something really bad, I will politely ask my client if they have any health concerns first. I am not one to bring bad news to anyone, and I'm very careful not to scare anyone. I will always try to lean towards the positive and recommend anything that I think can help them. I once worked on a murder case in Virginia that involved a man that was shot in his truck. The client wanted to know where this man kept some money, as well as knowing who committed the murder. I saw this man come from a driveway. He was older and gray, and there was something unusual about his walk. Then I realized he was actually missing a leg. I even targeted which leg it was. He was with another man, and he shot the victim. This was confirmed by the police, and the man was brought in. Just a little added fact about this story. I did get in touch with the detective on the case who was in the city of Richmond, and I didn't hear back from him, but he was very interested in my work. I'm not sure what happened to him, but I would have liked to have worked with him more. Health also affects how I find suspects to crimes very often. I will give a physical description to the client or authorities, and that may include someone who is withdrawing from drugs or someone who has a bad cough. On a recent case, I described the suspect's thumbs as being mushrooms. This means they have short nails and are stubby. The smell of breath is important too. Some dogs can identify humans on drugs just from their smell. Their smell comes to me psychically. So basically, my senses are to see, to hear, to smell, and smell does come up in a lot of cases, actually. I once found a missing dog because I smelled a house that was being newly painted by painters. And that lady ended up finding her dog near that house. She knew exactly where it was on her block. Back to my book. I often have to identify how a person died. If it was a bullet, I will hear a gunshot. Although that is not exactly true, I've had some that were shot from a very, very far range, as in accidental shots. I will hear the sound or I feel it. This affected me in the worst way when I first started. It was simply scary. Does the victim feel this pain? Yes, absolutely. Talk to someone who survived a bullet wound and they will tell you what it is like. I am a very squeamish person too. I get panicked if I cut my finger, or even shaving for that matter. Now I am examining stab wounds and strangulations. It is honestly like having your worst fears come true. And now I do this for a living? I can't comprehend what I do sometimes. I just do it. I am helping people and it's my job. This is why they are paying me. Although I have learned to cope with all of this better over the years. I detach myself as much as I can from the scene of the crime. I keep it very simple and to the point. It's really amazing to me that I have predicted babies being born to couples who are now grown up. I'm going to actually edit this. It's not that the couples just grew up. We'll recite this again. It's really amazing to me that I have predicted babies being born who are now grown up. I truly believe that the spirit of the baby is around the couple even before conception. I could win the whole argument that science has brought up for ages about what stage our consciousness develops. We are not brains inside of fetus. We are a spirit. That spirit was once a fully developed human life at one time, too. Yes, I believe in past lives, but I will discuss this topic more in another chapter. When a woman is pregnant, I will often see the gender of the baby. This is presented a couple of ways. First, I will say the baby. First, I will see. Excuse me, I've got to do a typo here. First, I will see the baby at a later stage when it has hair and a prominent face. I think I need to do some work on this paragraph. In other words, what I'm saying is that I will see that baby maybe 3 or 4 years old in the future. The other thing is I will just hear boy or girl. Have I ever been wrong? Yes. Although if I see a girl and it turns out to be a boy, it could be a more feminine boy. That has happened. Or they have a second child and it is a girl. I do not always see what genitals are in the fetus. Sometimes I can, but most of the time not. Also, do I see the spirits of abortions and the spirits of miscarriages? Oh, I should say, also, I do see the spirits of abortions and the spirits of miscarriages and can identify if they were male or female. I have so many examples of couples who consulted with me in regards to having children. I don't know where to begin. I remember a couple of years ago, some clients of mine were trying to have a child. They were in their mid-30s, and the wife has Hashimoto's disease and other complications that made it very hard to get pregnant. They were ready to give up. I told them that his wife should go to a fertility clinic. And I even told them the city where they should seek them out. She started with specialists for a few months, but she didn't get pregnant. They came back to me for an appointment and I said they shouldn't give up. I told them to keep trying. One day I got an email from the husband and he said she was pregnant, or she is pregnant. Although he was very discreet about it because the possibility of a miscarriage was very high. So some months went by and I got a letter from them with a photo attached of their new baby girl. She was healthy and lovely. I think she is now over 2 years old and doing fine. I remember another client of mine in Australia was trying to have her third child. I told her that she would find out she was pregnant on a new moon in September. That actually happened. And now her boy is 6 years old. There are so many stories, and the ones surrounding children always bring me happiness. Psychic abilities can really make some positive things happen. It is something I try to remember when I'm having a heavy day discussing tragedies. I am only as effective with my abilities as the client I am working with. Some people have a dead signal, as I refer to it. I actually worry about those people. I think there is a good reason to why I can't read them. It could be they have some deep emotional issues, or it could be as simple as an attitude problem. Sometimes it has been bad health issues. When I first started, I got some pretty nasty customers. And I'm honest about this. They were rude and they would mock what I do. Often a criticism like, "You aren't very good for what you charge." They thought I was a magician, or what they interpreted I should be from television. I had so much opposition when I first started that I'm surprised I kept doing it. People would test me and lie, and that completely stops my stream of vision. They had no idea how my abilities worked and had no intention of learning. I remember one day I got a call from a new client. She tested me, but in a much different way. She was honest and humble about it. She said to me, "I would like it if you could tell me about a person who recently deceased around me, and some details about that person." You see, I have been to many of the best mediums I could find, spent a lot of money, and nobody would give me a correct answer. I said to her, "Sure, I will try." "Are you speaking about the younger man around you?" "He was in his 20s when he passed." And I gave her some other details about this young man. She replied to me, "I am so impressed that you could see him, and the others could not. He was my son, and he was murdered. It had to do with drugs." So she said, "I would like to hire you to work on this case." So I worked on her case, and she was really grateful. I targeted the suspects involved in the places that were significant. This was in Massachusetts. And word, let's see, I'm going to edit here. And word was spreading through the New England states about what I could do. I worked on quite a few cases during this early time period. I was in my early 40s. One day I received a call from a girl in New Jersey. She lost her horse. He got out of his paddock and disappeared in the hills around there. The police were helping the girl search with no results. So I told this girl I would actually go down there and help with the search. I would say my home, Massachusetts, it was at least a 2.5-hour drive. The police said I was wasting my time and the horse was probably dead. I remember telling the girl that property where the horse was kept was haunted, and not in a good way. I continued with the search, and my details led to finding the horse. They were so grateful. I remember the news headline, and some other psychic was on the news taking the credit for the find. She was a fraud, very simply, because the girl never talked to her. I was the only one that led the investigation. After that, the family of the girl became big followers of mine, and this led to a whole bunch of stuff I did in New Jersey. I received hundreds of new followers on my Facebook page from New Jersey as well. One day, I was invited to be in a psychic fair down there. I set up a tent among a bunch of, among a bunch of other readers and vendors in the small rural town. I think I asked $20 a reading and kept the money in a jar. I suddenly had a big line to get a reading with me. In fact, everyone else reading in the fair was empty. I would hear people in the background saying, "You have to get a reading from this guy. He is the real deal." I remember being so hungry because I didn't have any time for lunch. Well, actually, the truth was there was no place to have lunch around there, too. But I didn't have any time. When I finished, my business cards were gone, and the jar was completely full of money. I met a lot of longtime customers down there, and that also led to some very serious investigations. The biggest one was a 17-year-old girl who disappeared. This was in northern New Jersey, and I worked with the police on it. I felt she was killed by someone who was supposed to be a new dating prospect for her. I spoke to her mother as well. I had to tell her she was deceased because I saw her spirit walking around her house. I had to be honest. I worked for at least a month on this case and led the police to some very relevant places. Then the investigation was halted to a stop by the parents. I think they were having trouble coping and made a statement to the press. They wanted to presume that she was still alive and would be back home one day. They felt she just wanted to travel. Months and then years went by. The Facebook page dedicated to her kept going. But no girl ever returned again. It was a shame because I felt it could provide closure to the family. The girl was also hard to warm up to me. Even though she was in spirit, she didn't want me to know all the details. The whole thing was just very sad. But to the people working on the case, they were impressed with what I could do. More cases popped up in New Jersey, including a man that went missing on his bicycle from work one night. A client wanted to find him. A letter to a road, and then I said I saw him lying by the train tracks. She asked, what side of the tracks? I said where the sun was shining. The next day he was found in that exact place. He was slightly injured, but okay. The family would not seek out my advice because they did not like psychics. My client said if it wasn't for me, he would not have been found till too late. Nobody was looking in that area. I wonder if the man who was injured on the bike ever knew this story of how he was found. Probably not. I'm going to kind of jump parts here. I didn't really backtrack enough on some of this book, and I will tell you about this story. I don't believe I talked about this story on the last podcast. I can't talk about cases that I work directly with the police on. That is their rules. Unless I get permission from their superiors and go through approval and a lot of red tape, I just can't put those cases on my website. One of the best relationships I had with the police department was a case I worked on in 2019. To protect the anonymity of the department, I will say this was a big case in Virginia involving 2 missing teenagers. This was also a big media story. They had been missing 4 years, and a suspect was being held in jail for his confession to murdering them. He would not reveal the location of their bodies, or he would receive the death penalty. So one day, I was called by the chief detective. He set up a meeting call with other police detectives in the room, listening to me on the speakerphone. He gave me very brief information about the case. Then I started to give them information. All of them were completely blown away because I was giving them clues and locations they were already investigating. Let me add that. Then they wanted to bring me out there and see if I could give them some locations. We developed a great relationship, and their openness to my abilities really helped me solve this. This case was a very brutal and scary story. The police took me out to lunch, and I got to drive in their patrol car to certain locations. It was the most engaging experience of my career. We had 2 young women's remains to find in a very widespread rural county. One of the women I confirmed was at the last known location she was seen at. It was a 50-acre property with steep mountains and heavy brush. There were a lot of poisonous snakes there as well, like copperheads. I hiked the woods all the way up to the mountain. I knew the one woman was there. There was just so much terrain. The suspect I read very well, and he was a guy who spent a lot of time in the woods. The detective asked me if I wanted to meet with him at the prison. I said no. You see, I felt he had psychic abilities too, and that would make my investigation harder. Not only good people have these abilities, but bad people too. I knew this wouldn't be easy. After I got home, I sent the detective an email with a lot of descriptions of an area we should be searching in. He pieced this together and used his own time to search. It wasn't until the beginning of 2020 that he called me. He said, "Did you see the news about the girl?" I said, "No, I don't get your local news out here, and I never watch the news anyway." He says, "I found her, and it was very much like you said in your emails. I pieced it together." I was very grateful now that family has the closure for their missing daughter. I wasn't mentioned on the news, but that is okay. I did it, and they even hired a very famous psychic on the case before me that didn't help them. I did it, and I was very proud of this. He asked me to help him find the next victim, and I gave him more information, but there hasn't been any results yet. This was in another county. I am grateful for their cooperation, and they are grateful for me. They are great people doing a great service for their community. Plus, the police know the best restaurants to eat at, and I miss their hospitality. I actually gave some of them personal readings, and they were impressed. I even had one officer tell me about his own encounters with his own personal psychic experiences. It can be hard gaining the trust of the police with so many of these cases, but this is a prime example of what they can do with my help. That's a true story. In fact, I did hear from the lead detective not too long ago. We still keep in touch. There's another story. A woman employed me from Arkansas about a year ago. Her brother was missing, and he was being treated at a rehabilitation facility for alcohol and drugs. The sheriff's department was also working on the case. I gave her a direction on the map to follow. I gave her descriptions of people that associated with her brother and said he was staying at a house. Well, she told the sheriff's department they searched the house and property that was at least several acres. We spoke again. She said he was there, but not there now. I checked my map and I said they were looking in the wrong place. He was across the road, down by the river. She called the sheriff's department again, and they searched by the river, and they found him. He was not alive, unfortunately. I don't try to read his spirit or anything like that. I'm just trying to find him for my client. It was very fortunate that the police were willing to listen to me through my client. This is the hard part about what I do. They are often not willing to listen to me. And I don't really blame them. There are so many fakes out there, and I hate to say it, but psychics are not taken very seriously in this country. A big part of that is all the notoriety, TV shows, etc., that glamorize this profession and turn it into a magic show. When I do readings for other countries, I am taken very seriously because it's a part of their culture. One of those countries is India. They are very open to what I do, and wonderful people too. There is a warmth there and an openness to the spirit world. I have a lot of testimonials on my website and social media. I am very adamant about clients providing the details of the investigations I help them with. It isn't so important for my reputation, but I use it as a reference to help me in future cases. They tell me what worked and didn't work in certain situations. I also want to expose what is possible to the general public. On a side note, speaking about India, I have a current long-term client. I remember in talking about the health readings and that kind of stuff. I think it was her brother lived in more of a rural farming area in India. He was not old. I think either late 20s, early 30s, something like that. And I did a reading for her. She was on the edge. She said, my brother's been suffering these terrible pains in his stomach, and the doctor saw him, did some tests. He thinks it could be cancer. And I remember a couple of things. I remember seeing it localized in the small intestine. And I also heard the word colitis. So I gave her the information. I said, no, it's not cancer. It's actually an ulcerated colitis condition. And that turned out to be true. And apparently he is doing well and fine now. This was quite a few years ago. But health readings reading people's health goes more than just talking about their health conditions and what they should be taking or whatever. It gets into crime investigations and is very important, such as the man with the missing leg. I will often have to describe facial features and stuff like that. Anyway, so the work goes on in my book. And that's a lot of work. I mean, as I'm reading this, I'm actually remembering things that I left out in here that I've got to put into it. So how I'm going to get through this is beyond me. I have so many cases, so many stories. By the way, the missing 17-year-old in New Jersey, that case was very, very sad. And I worked with one of the investigators on the case, and she was quite impressed with what I could see. In fact, one of my clients who lived up there sought my help out after the case was dismissed to see if she could snoop around some areas. And came upon a lot of stuff, actually, but they never reopened the case. They closed it up. That was sad. It was very sad. I used to look on their Facebook page from time to time, and there'd be a post commemorating her birthday. or her disappearance, or talking about her dog, or something like that. And they'd say, well, we hope you come back, and still no news. This was about probably seven years ago at least. So it's been quite a long time, maybe 6 years. But I've made a lot of clients in New Jersey, a lot of clients up there that are still clients today. It's amazing how one state gravitates towards you. Thinking of missing horses, yes, that was my first missing horse case, but I worked on quite a few after that. Well, I shouldn't say after that, because around 2000, I think it was about 2008, there was a lot of cases about horses that were taken, stolen. A lot of stolen horses. You know, that was about the time that the government reinstated the act that horses could be slaughtered in the U.S. again, which I was very against. It was a big mistake. Well, the economy was in the toilet, and people were stealing horses for money and sending them to slaughterhouses for money. I kid you not. Worked on cases where horses were taken out of trailers, taken out of yards, and yeah, some of them were sold. It was an awful time. But I worked on quite a few horse cases. Worked on 2 missing horses down in North Carolina. Still friends with the lady who is a real professional with horses. And these were actually horses that were being pastured at properties where these people lost them. Now led them across the hills, and we finally got those horses back. I also did some other work for this woman. I remember about an uncle who passed away, and they were trying to find him, and I remember leading him to the firearms he had in the house and stuff that she needed to know about, and that was another story. Just so many cases when I think back on it. And the truth about the people being nasty to me in the beginning was absolute fact. I did not have this work very easy when I first started. I did not have an easy time. I even say on my website now, if you are rude or disrespectful, I reserve the right to not talk to you. I won't give you a refund or anything. You just go away. But I really, really had some negative people when I first started. And I'm surprised that I kept up with it. But anyway, I wish you well. And I'm going to have to go. And next time I will share more passages from the book I am writing or creating. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So if you're on my Facebook page, please give me some feedback. I'll post this podcast on there, this episode. And I will talk to you soon. Everybody be well. And if you want a reading with me, just go to my website. It's www.toddsiegelpsychic.com. And you do everything there. It's very easy to do. Okay, goodbye and take care for now.